So a few weeks ago, I had a bunch of people sending me this article that was written by Vox, and it was highlighting 10 videos that were going viral on TikTok with terrible financial advice. That I made the list. I was number 10 on it. So I actually showed Jerry. Yeah, I didn't show him. I presented him with, Jerry, dude, I'm going viral on this article about like how bad advice is going viral on TikTok. And Jerry looked at me and went, what did you say? Panic mode, which is really funny. And then I'm kind of giving you a little bit of a spoiler alert, but my advice actually wasn't that bad. Anyway, we're going to go over the pieces because I have my two partners, Michael and Jerry, with me, and talk about which ones are right, which ones are wrong, and why they're wrong. And I think this is going to be a pretty funny piece because Jerry is nowhere near TikTok. So we're going to drop some stuff on him that I think is going to be entertaining. So our first question, and this one is going to Jerry. The claim is, when you start an S-corp, you can buy everything you own as a company expense, and therefore you don't have to pay taxes on it. You can also take one corporate vacation per year, and you can employ yourself and your children without paying taxes. And then she ends the video with, it feels real shitty, but it's kind of how you avoid paying taxes. So, is this true or is this false?
No, that's false. No, yeah, I mean, starting an S-corp, yes, there are some things that you can genuinely say is a legitimate business expense that you can run through an S-corp, and so that can save you some taxes. But going into some of the other stuff she said, putting your personal expenses through an S-corp is a big no-no. If you ever get audited, you're going to be in trouble for that.
Yeah, the IRS is not stupid. I mean, they've kind of figured out what a lot of people try to do when they try to, break the system as opposed to just working within the system. I mean, that's one. The second thing is, do you want to let the tax tail wag the dog? The motivation of tax efficiency shouldn't be the sole motivation behind the decisions that you make, right? Having a robust and successful business should be the motivation for you to make the decisions that you're making, right? So do you want to be tax efficient? Sure. Do you want to work within the boundaries of what the IRS allows you to do? Yes.
Yeah. So, and there are good uses for an S-corp.
That's what I was about.
It's just not, it's not a panacea. It doesn't fit for every type of business. So definitely talk with a good tax advisor to figure out which kind of organizational structure is a best fit.
And this is kind of a tangent now, but I guess it kind of fits in the lines. For the business owners that are trying to not pay as much in taxes, and so they might go on a shopping spree to buy, things that do apply to the business, maybe cameras or some expenses that they can bring that tax down. Should you be buying things just to avoid paying taxes, or should you be focused on making as much money that the company can make?
Well, hopefully it's obvious. It's the latter. If you're
spending. It is not obvious, Jerry.
Yeah, okay.
It is not obvious, dude.
No, I mean, any money that you're spending to put back into the business is money you don't get to take home. So that this idea, I think I heard somebody say, I make $120,000 a year, but because I buy all this equipment, I only pay tax on 40. No, you're only making $40,000 a year. All that money that's going back into the business, you don't have anymore. So there are good reasons to buy new equipment. If it increases your capacity and increases your revenue down the road, that's an investment. But buying stuff just for the sake of avoiding taxes, what's that save you, 50% at most? Well, you just gave up 50%. So that's, you lost more than you gained.
Moving on to number 2, the claim. The Federal Reserve has a secret $1 million bank accounts for every American citizen. I don't remember seeing this video, so we're going to kind of go more into it. A woman alleges that there is a letter on the back of your Social Security card that correlates to a bank account owned by the Federal Reserve attached to your name and containing millions of dollars. You can access it, she says, by looking up the routing number of your local bank and entering your Social Security number as the account number. I've used it on energy and the payment has gone through, she claims. I've never heard anything like this before. Either of you guys?
No.
My first reaction is it's a way to capture somebody's social security number. It's some sort of identity theft scheme.
Maybe this
Or she just stole someone else's bank account number and got lucky that her social security number corresponded to a bank account number.
Yeah. Rule of thumb, if it sounds too good to be true, probably is, right?
That's a good rule of thumb. That's an absolutely good rule of thumb. Number 3, the claim. You can become a millionaire if you open an MPI account. We know what an MPI account is. Do you know what
I actually don't.
It's an
IUL.
Yeah, it's an index universal life. You can become a millionaire if you open up a Roth IRA and systematically put money in every single month and every single year and invest for the long term and stick to your asset allocation. Lots of ways to become a millionaire.
Yes. So this is actually a really good one to talk about because it's not specific to this, but who wrote this is Curtis Ray. He's really big on TikTok, and what he's done really well is kind of rebranded an IUL in a really cool sounding way and markets it really well. So what I get a lot, the questions I get a lot is, what's your view on insurance or using insurance as an investment vehicle? Which I think there's probably...
Don't.
But I think there's a lot of value in here because it is a question that is asked very frequently. So let's go over it real quick. Let's talk about what insurance is and why we don't mix insurance with investing.
Do you want to take that one?
I can start on it if you want to add to it. So when I look at insurance as a vehicle to cover the income of somebody in case of a catastrophic loss. So husband, wife, children, something happens to the mom or the dad. And when that happens, there is a loss of income as a result of it in our assumption, right? So the life insurance is truly designed to cover that loss of income for a certain period of time to allow for the surviving spouse to grieve, to be able to go through the process to, offset that loss of income. When insurance started to be used as an investment tool as opposed to a risk management tool, that's where it started to get a little bit too convoluted. And you have these investment strategies that are based on life insurance that one, I haven't been able to fully work through the pros and the cons of it. Two, the costs are typically really high in those. And three, man, you really have to be able to thoroughly understand what it is that you're getting into. And four, the death benefit, the whole purpose for getting life insurance is typically much less. And, to give it context, if you go with a straight term policy as opposed to one of these, we'll call it investment-based life insurance vehicles, the amount of a benefit that you're leaving behind to your surviving spouse and or your children on a term policy is usually far greater for a lot less money than it would be in one of these alternative products. So for me, when I look at insurance, it's how do I cover my family in case, God forbid, something were to happen to me, not as a mechanism of how to grow an investment.
Yeah,
I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, I would. So you kind of hinted at the idea that insurance is useful as a risk transfer mechanism. And so the idea, like you were saying in the case of life insurance, I have a very significant risk. If I die and my income goes away, what happens to my family? Are they going to have to, for a lot of families nowadays, they have 2 wage earners, okay, but that might not be enough to support the house. Some families are still single income, and so okay, they lose all of their income in that scenario, which could be catastrophic. Well, you buy something like life insurance to protect from that risk and at least give your spouse time and your children time to adjust so they're not just thrown to the streets. As a concept, that's what insurance is good for, is transferring that risk, the risks that you can't afford to take, to someone else. That has a cost, okay? The insurance proposal is I take a certain loss that I can afford to avoid a small risk or a low probability event of catastrophic proportions. Okay, so take the risk I can take to avoid the one I can't. Okay, it doesn't matter how you package it, whether you throw an investment product around it or term insurance or any other variety of insurance, it's still the same thing. Okay, so if you take it apart and say, all right, I need to buy term insurance, which is your most basic form of insurance. You're just paying the straight premium for the insurance for this year. And I'm going to invest along the side and do something, do my investments here, pay for my insurance here. There is nothing that's packaged in a insurance product that you couldn't do that way. So then it comes down to a question of, okay, well, which one's better? So there are uses for these different packaged products, variable life, indexed life insurance policies, things like that. But they're not for everyone. And if you don't know the difference, probably your best approach, at least in my opinion, is stick with the very basic term insurance and invest on the outside.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add to that is, when we hear, even on TikTok, these pitches of insurance and investment vehicle behind insurance, it sounds really great on the surface, but you owe it to yourself to really do your due diligence and your homework and read the package and understand everything in the fine print, because like we always say, the devil is definitely in the details.
Yeah. And I don't want to sound like we're being too hard on insurance products. Again, I want to emphasize there are good reasons to use some of these products, just not for every case.
All right, I don't know if we're going to have answers for this one, but the claim is you can pay less on hotels if you buy their points. So this guy claims that you can purchase points directly from a hotel's loyalty program, then use them to pay for your stay. I don't know.
This is like the credit card guy.
It's kind of like the credit card guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, the travel point. There's a lot of travel points, people. That's not our field.
I mean, there's probably a formula where the purchase per point makes sense based on some sort of promotion that they're having at any given point in time. But probably if you spend your time on your business, you end up making more money than what those points will get you.
Let's skip right past that one because I can't wait for this one. Number 5, the claim, just buy Tesla calls. A TikToker documents himself buying $15,000 worth of Tesla calls and loses thousands within a few minutes, but a few hours later ends up making about $7,000 in total. Jerry?
So very early in my career, before I had my CFA and all of that, and as I was learning about stocks and bonds and options were very enticing, and I did play in the options market a little bit. And I'm glad I did it when I was young and didn't have a lot to lose, because options are a losing proposition. They're the complicated thing about them, at least for the average investor, is that there's a time value element to them, and every day they lose value. So when you're trading in options, you're not only speculating that the price is going to go a certain direction, but you're speculating how fast it's going to get there. That's a very dangerous game. And so, there are professional options traders that, have specific things that they're using options for. They're very useful for hedging certain risks, but as a investment strategy, I would stay away.
Yeah, this is one that I've caught heat on just because there's so many kids on TikTok, not only, telling everybody that they need to be basically in options, buying options, but how to do it. And they're showcasing this I'm 24, I'm making millions, etc. That's the trend right now. So I take it, I'm a little scared, but.
Well, by definition, a trend isn't something that is evergreen, right?
Yeah, but this trend, I mean, just to Jerry's point, Jerry did this when he was younger. This seems to be a trend that's kind of always been around. Maybe social media has just grabbed a little bit more attention.
Well, it's an enticing proposition. You get very high leverage on your money. And so it doesn't take a lot of capital investment to control a large amount of notional value of security. That can work for you, or it can very much work against you. That value disappears quickly. And so, even if you're right, though, even if you look at something like Tesla and say, okay, well, I think the value is going to go up, and I want to use these options so I can take a little bit of money and control a lot of value of Tesla. Even if you're right and the stock price goes up, if it doesn't do it fast enough, you still lose your money. So that's just not a good way to do it.
Keeping in mind that we tend to think, especially as we're younger, that we're invincible and we can't get hit. I personally, bearing that in mind, that people will still want to pursue this strategy, I would just say do so with caution, and take the Vegas approach, right? Which is, if you go to Las Vegas, you want to go into town before you even get there and say, I am willing to gamble X amount of dollars, and I won't go $1 over it, and I'm willing to just lose this money. And if I lose it, I'm okay. I'll still enjoy my weekend, and I'll walk away with a fun trip. And if you want to do that with your options, fix the dollar amount that you're gonna, play your options with, and don't deviate from there. Don't keep putting more money in because you think you can make up the loss plus then get the gain that you originally thought you were going to, because that's where you take investing and you turn it into gambling. As in Vegas, the house ultimately wins.
That's a good point. Number 6, the claim, just short the market. This is a viral TikTok of hedge fund billionaire Bill Ackman. Is that how you pronounce his name? Ackman?
I think so.
Oh, okay. Explaining how to short the stock market using a metaphor about coin collecting. It did not help my personal understanding of short selling whatsoever. Do we need more context?
On shorting the market?
On this piece in specifically, just short the market?
A lot of times those headlines can be misleading. He's not a stupid guy, so I'm hoping there was some context in what he wrote beyond the headline. But no, that headline is terrible advice.
Yeah.
I'd be surprised if his sole strategy is shorting the market.
Yeah, I think this is an example of somebody just taking a clip, because it wasn't even, somebody just grabbed a clip of him.
There are certain companies that, they're, that are just frankly overpriced, for various reasons. You get these zombie companies out there. No, I'm not going to name names right now. Not allowed to do that. There are investments out there or companies that, for various reasons, the price is just inflated, and so there are investors like Mr. Ackman who, frankly, kind of help the market out by pressing them back down to where they belong. So that's a viable strategy, but you better know what you're doing. That's a very dangerous game to play.
Number 7, the claim, just copy the investments of the rich. And here's a guy whose investment went up 16% in 2 weeks by copying the exact investments made by CEOs. That's all it says in this video. I actually know a lot of people that kind of follow the same strategy. What were your thoughts on that one, V? There's no point in following somebody else's investment strategy because it's specific to each person's goals and risk tolerance and capacity, or?
Well, there's some logic to it, especially if you're taking it down to the finer tuned, take a look at what company CEOs are doing with their own money. If they're buying their own stock, that's usually, it is a bullish signal that they think that their company is undervalued. That's been a philosophy or an idea that's been around for a long, long time, and of course CEOs make use of that now, and so they'll use that as a way to kind of manipulate the market's perception of their company. So I don't think it's a great idea. I certainly wouldn't do it myself, but it's not a good substitute for doing your own research. If you're going to be trading in individual stocks, know what you own, and just because somebody else bought it should never be the reason why.
So if Elon puts 1.5 billion into Bitcoin, you're not following him?
Elon's not above making mistakes.
That's a good point.
So,
Well, and to that point, what's most important to remember is you as an investor are unique, right? There are no two investors that have the same DNA. And so your tolerance for taking on risk and your capacity for taking on that risk is going to be different from these CEOs, right? So you want to tailor your investments based on who you are as an individual, what are your goals, what does your risk profile look like, not what somebody else's goals or somebody else's risk profile looks like. Now, if you want to come up with your allocation based on who you are and then say, okay, so X% I'm going to invest in stocks, bonds, in stocks and ETFs and mutual funds, and then look towards, the Warren Buffetts of the world and say, what are the mutual funds that they invest in? What are the ETFs they're investing in? And, use that as a source of educating yourself. Personally, I don't see any harm with doing that, but to just mirror your investment strategy because the CEO is doing it, I think it takes away from you investing based on who you are and what you're trying to accomplish for yourself.
There's a good article that came out, I don't recall it was today or yesterday, that was, the headline was something to the effect of, Warren Buffett, the truth about Warren Buffett's track record. And here you have an investor who's practically legendary. I mean, the guy has a fantastic track record. And the point of the article was, hey, he's done great, but even he's had losses. Okay, he's made some investments that didn't work out, and there's no investor that hasn't. At least not if they've been around long enough. You're gonna, there are going to be things that don't go according to plan. And if you don't know why you bought it in the first place, if you only bought it because somebody else did, well, now what do you do? A lot of times, those opportunities that you thought was an opportunity, you bought it and it went down in price in a big way. Sometimes that's just a reason to be buying more. If you understand what you own and why you own it, you can evaluate, okay, is this an opportunity to buy at an even lower price, or did I make a mistake here? I don't want to go into an investment not ready for that question.
It's interesting. I feel like market investing is probably the only area we would say look towards somebody else and duplicate that process, but we wouldn't do that in so many other aspects of our life, right? If I saw somebody who went out and bought a certain type of car, I wouldn't go buy that car just because they bought it.
If all your friends were jumping off a cliff, would you do it
too? It's like I will go test drive the car myself. I'll check the car out myself, and I'll make a decision based on the car that I want. If everybody was out buying a Mini Cooper, I'm a big guy. I'm not fitting in a Mini Cooper, so it doesn't work for me. So probably when it comes to your long-term growth and investing for ultimately wanting to retire or buy a house, or whatever the case may be, tailored to who you are.
Yeah, just made me think of how lucky I am to have two financial advisors around me, because I'm a sucker for marketing. I see things, I'm like, ooh, that would look good on me. Not with investing, but definitely with product sales.
And I would say probably Jerry's a little bit more. I am too, right? He's probably got more discipline than I do. It's really easy because marketing gets you, right?
That's right.
Apple puts out videos that make you want to buy an Apple product.
That's right. Elon drops a new Cybertruck. I'm like, oh, I could look good at a Cybertruck. 8, pay as little on your down payment and mortgage as possible. And I'll give Jerry a little bit more context. It's going to be Curtis Ray. Curtis Ray is back saying that it's best to spend as little as possible on your mortgage and down payment, and then invest the money you're not spending in an MPI. Was that IUL?
We already addressed the MPI question, but
it's basically the idea of putting as little down on your house so that you could use the other money to put in investment. So, take the insurance policy out and let's just talk about it.
So basically the premise here is borrow money for this so that you can invest in that. And of course, if I put my compliance hat on, I have to say you should never do that. Okay. In reality, it may or may not be an appropriate idea. For myself personally, I look at it as a risk management decision. How much do I want to have an obligation for versus how much do I want to invest? And I know a lot about the things I invest in, and I have a high degree of confidence in my own ability to evaluate those decisions. I would never borrow money to put into an investment that I didn't understand, period. Especially on something that's a necessity like your home. But for a person who is, willing to invest the time into getting themselves educated, learning about the different things that they're investing in, and if they have confidence in their cash flows and their ability to service the debt, it's not a terrible idea.
The only thing I'd add to this is, and I'm by no means a specialist when it comes to mortgages, so I could be wrong here, but if you're putting 5% down versus 20% down, if I'm a bank, you at 20% are less of a risk than you are at 5%, and I would adjust my pricing based on that, right? So your rate on your mortgage will be higher, I presume, if you borrow 95% versus borrowing 80%. That's kind of my thought here from a fundamental standpoint. From a behavioral standpoint, though, I personally don't look at my home as an investment, right? My home is a place for me to go after a long day at work, to kick back, spend time with my wife, be with my kids, enjoy the time that we have together, sit around the table, and have this roof over our head that we thoroughly enjoy spending time in. The concept of it as an investment doesn't ever cross my mind. And I think that's, a cultural element that that people have, started to adopt more and more, is view your home as an investment. I would say view your home as a home.
Yeah.
And view your investments as investments.
Yeah.
And to the extent that you can, try not to, mingle the two together.
Yeah. From experience, I completely agree. I've driven myself mad looking at my house and investment and going, I have this much money in here. What is it doing? And it wasn't good for my wife and my relationship. I completely agree with you there. Number 9. Now, the contrary, actually, you should pay more on your mortgage. This woman makes the case that if you pay half your monthly mortgage payment every 2 weeks, you can save money on interest and pay off your mortgage faster.
True. Yeah. I mean, if you're making the payment every 2 weeks, but let me take a step backwards. It depends on your bank and how they process the payments. But assuming that you are accruing interest on a daily basis, if you make the payment earlier, then the amount of interest that accrues with respect to those dollars is a little bit less. It doesn't move the needle in a big way, but it does move the needle.
I think the statistic is if you make a 13th payment a year versus the 12th payment, you shave 7 or so years off. There's some formula for that. And so I know that there are people that exercise that typically.
Yeah, and we get this question a lot. Should I pay off my mortgage? Especially when somebody sells a business or something like that. They have a large supply of cash, and now they're deciding what do they do with it. And paying off debt is a very intelligent thing to do in a lot of cases. Certainly, that's your lowest risk proposition. It's just not, it's not a one-size-fits-all answer. So some people will look at it and go, well, my mortgage is 3%. If I've got this capital and I put it into the mortgage, okay, I've got a guaranteed it's saving me 3%. Can I do better than that by investing in something else? That's not an unreasonable question to be asking yourself either.
This is a little bit of a tangent, but Why does the SEC not consider your primary residence and your net worth to become an accredited investor?
They view it as a consumable, and so you're. That's, I think, the best way I can put it is, it's not, most people, when they're looking at the accredited investor standard, they're looking at it as, basically you should be a, sophisticated investor. You should know enough. You should know the questions to be asking and be capable of evaluating the risks and the, potential opportunity. For a non-accredited investor, the government kind of takes the position of, we need to protect you from yourself and not let you take those kinds of risks. So looking at your residence, some parts of the country that, might not make a big difference. Here in California, I bought my first house when I was, first condo, when I was 20-something years old. And it's gone up in value an awful lot, since then. And so, big part of my net worth came from that. And I think that's true of a lot of homeowners in Southern California. But realistically, if I sell that house, I've still got to use that money to buy the next one. So that's not something that is really accessible. And, it's not an indication of my, capability to evaluate an investment.
Number 10, coming from me, and when I told Jerry this was priceless. Invest in compound interest as early as possible. And what they wrote on me, former pro skateboarder turned investment firm co-founder Mikey Taylor says that 18-year-olds should invest $300 each month in the stock market for 8 years, and by the time they retire, it'll be worth $1.8 million. Then it gives more context to what I actually said, which was a Tony Robbins, I was talking about something Tony Robbins said, that basically the power of compound interest and giving time behind it and looking at historical return, you could turn this into this. And then when I told Jerry, Jerry was like, oh, yeah, that's good. So.
Sounds basic enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was actually the only one where even when they wrote on here, they said what this really is, and they said a pretty solid long-term investment strategy. So I was the 1 out of 10 that.
You said into a Roth IRA?
No, for this one.
Or you just invested $100
This one was
a month?
where this video came from was a video of us talking about compound interest. Got it. And in it, I used something that Tony Robbins said, the power of compound interest. And I think he was talking about the S&P 500 at that time.
Look, it's been well documented at this point. The power of compounding is massive.
Yeah.
And the ability for your money to work for you over a long period of time can put you in a position where you can become financially free at some point. And so being able to have a disciplined, systematic saving strategy is a formula that, can get you pretty good success.
We're going to end it on that. And let us know in the comments what you thought. If you like this style, start sending us videos that you're seeing. And we will then compile them, and we'll do this every so often where we'll pick a handful of them and talk about them. And thank you guys, of course. We're so appreciative of you being involved and subscribing. Send this video out to anybody that you know is on TikTok, sharing crazy advice. The people need to know the truth. Thank you guys. We'll see you next time.